So what's up, guys? This is episode 8 with the SaaS Sales Whisperer. For this episode, we're joined by Brian Liebel, the Director of Sales Development at Ambition, somebody who's been in the trenches, somebody who knows the game in and out. We're excited to dive into a conversation. We're going to be talking about everything SDRs, everything sales development. I'm really excited for this. Hi, Brian. Thank you so much for making time for today's call.
Oh, thanks, man. Glad to be here.
Brian, so there's a saying, SDRs are the bloodline of any company, right? What are some skills or qualities that make them one? Why are they the bloodline of any company?
Yeah, this is a good question. And I'm going to try to give you the non-cliche cookie cutter responses to a lot of these questions. I think, one, SDRs are the bloodline of any company because they are literally that tip of the spear, right? The first interaction a cold prospect has with your company, especially if you're, an SMB or mid-market company that doesn't have brand recognition, is that interaction with that SDR, right? So, we take that super seriously over here, and it's really important to have a positive experience. So skills that we're looking for, I think one of the most important for an SDR to be successful and be that front-facing person you want them to be is to be coachable, right? Most SDRs are going to come into your company with probably some type of experience, but the most successful people in any role are super coachable, and they're open to listening to you as a leader, listening to your company, listening to your founders, listening to your board, and being able to take that message and really turn it into, an outbound motion. So being coachable is obviously super important. I think the second thing going off of that is having having like this flexibility bone. Especially in today's world, companies need to be nimble. Companies are going to need to change their strategy. And, a lot of us sales pros know those salty war dogs that hate change, and they don't want to adapt the new pricing model, and they don't want to pitch the new feature of their product. And man, people that are just comfortable with changing on a dime do really well, especially in sales development, because in any given moment, you could uncover a brand new vertical that you didn't know was a good fit for your company. You could be offering a different product, and being flexible is just super important here. And then lastly, I think this is really hard to measure, but having a positive mindset and being solution oriented. So I kind of couple those two things together because I think some people mistake being positive and having that mindset of just being a rah-rah type person that just is always up. But I think it's important to raise up problems when you're an SDR and to communicate issues. But we want to do that in a way that if there's a problem, raise it up and then come with a solution. And I think those are three kind of characteristics that at least the SDRs that I see that do well and move on to management or becoming an AE. Those are qualities that I find super important.
I think that's really interesting to learn as well. This gives a perspective where you don't need to necessarily have the prior experience in tech sales to be successful as an SDR. You just need these three traits, or that's at least what you look at, or what leaders should look at. Now, this brings me to something that's really important. Breaking into tech sales or breaking into SaaS is something that's spoken about quite a lot today. When I broke into SaaS about over 18 months ago, it was not really easy. The common response that I had was, you don't have SaaS experience. I don't think you're going to be a good fit. But Outplay counted on me and said, took that bet. What do you think has changed over the last couple of months? How do you see this panning out 2023 and beyond in terms of SDRs breaking into SaaS?
Man, it's such a good question. I think it's wild. I've been in SaaS for 5 to 6 years. Prior to that, I was a market director for AT&T. So I came from a B2C retail selling world, and I had no idea, right? I'd never even heard of what SaaS was or tech sales or SDR. To be honest with you, my buddy worked in an outsourced sales development company and just said, "Hey, I heard you hate your job and working Saturdays and getting cursed out on a conference call. Come work at this company. It's pretty cool, right?" So I think what's changed to your question is like it's more known, right? There are companies like Bendition and sales boot camps, and there are companies out there that are targeting college level people or professional people in different industries. And over the past few years, it's more well known. So when it comes to like breaking in, I think that awareness is way higher than it was 18 months ago or 5 years ago, excuse me. And there's just more resources on the internet, right? So like if you Google search how to break into tech sales, you're probably going to find your podcast and 100 others and 5 companies. And man, it's really cool. Because when you talk to your friends or family that have no idea what you do behind the SaaS curtain, it is definitely a place I tell everyone that I mentor, like, you want to be here. And there's a multitude of reasons for that. But I think to answer your question, it's just awareness is up. There's a lot of buzz around it, and it is easier to find, maybe harder to break in, but it's definitely more well known. And what I mean by harder to break in is there's more demand, right? There's hundreds of people applying to SDR roles instead of 5 to 10.
Got it. I've been following you a while right now, and one of your posts recently, when you had mentioned quality and quantity are not opposites. That's a really different perspective of a way to look at things. SDRs I talk to, Brian, usually tell me they struggle between personalizing and crafting and writing the perfect email, and the other end of the spectrum is going to be spraying and praying, right? How does one SDR actually balance between this? How do you suggest somebody brings in that quality at scale?
Yeah, man, I'll tell you this. I am probably the most like vocal, not on LinkedIn, but in my own company around the information on LinkedIn and how you absorb what people are saying, right? There's thousands of thought leaders, and half of them are going to tell you to do it this way, and the other half are going to tell you to do it the opposite way. And the important thing is to do it the way that works for you and your business. We have a theme here at Ambition in 2023 called just be different, right? Mm-hmm. I don't care what you say, how you say it. I just want you to stand out from the noise. To our last point, right? There's just way more outbound traffic than I think there ever was, with spraying and praying and just hundreds of businesses out there blasting email. So the first step is just understanding how to be different. A more tactical answer for you, though, is having a framework for personalization that you stick to. This is the copycat industry, right? So most frameworks are going to be very similar, right? First sentence of your email is a personalized first sentence. The second is, what is the problem that the person you're reaching out to experiences? The third is, how does your software or service solve for it? And then the last is interest-based call to action, right? That is really a pretty simple framework that, as long as you stick to that, you're going to be able to keep your mind on a track that allows you to deliver that quantity and quality. But really the key is to know when to actually do it, right? The key is to know when do you hyper personalize. So when do you take that first sentence and talk about, your history or something that you did, or speak about an article that someone wrote or a podcast that they were on, and when not to do that, right? I think it's really hard to, you find this prospect, they have a great title, they're in a perfect company, but they don't have anything to personalize, right? They don't post on LinkedIn, right? They're not on podcasts. Their last post was a year ago, right? And it's in my opinion, it's a waste of time to try to make some stupid tie from their college mascot to the product you solve, right? Drop the first sentence and just get to the problem you're solving, right? And how you solve it. So the key is knowing when to hyper personalize, when not to, and then having a framework that you're able to stick to. And that's going to allow you to drive both quantity and quality. I think it's BS when people say you can't have both. It is truly something I feel super strongly about, but I won't go on that tangent.
That's quite an interesting perspective. Talking about personalization, Brian, one of the things that I hear from SDRs is they actually spend a lot of time. Like you said, they're probably trying to research and go back into the college history, trying to figure out if there's a way to tie back their product into what kind of personalization they can bring in, right? What's the right way to do it? How can some SDRs speed up things when it comes to personalization?
Well, man, I love what you said right there. SDRs are trying to do it. They're trying to tie something about their product to the person. And sometimes there is no tie, right? Sometimes it really doesn't make sense. So the worst usage of time for an SDR is to do that, right? You can have a super creative writer and maybe my profile has all this stuff you can latch on to, but I'm not in your ICP, right? I'm not actually a good fit. It's such a waste of time to craft this amazing email with this really cool, captivating subject line and personalized first sentence, but your product doesn't do anything for me. So like the first thing that SDRs need to do to spend time when it comes to personalization is, do you understand my business? Right? Look at the company, research the company, research my role, right? If you don't know for a fact that like, what my business does, how do you know your product or service can help me, right? So a lot of SDRs, I think the best personalization to me, and this is probably going to be contrary to what everyone else is saying, is not the really cool, captivating thing. It's like, hey, I understand that Ambition cares about selling their sales coaching platform to sales leaders, and you're probably struggling breaking into this segment or this market. If I could share with you how we could help you do that, is that going to be worth, maybe another combo? Yeah. It's directly what I care about. I don't care if you can tie my spaghetti eating contest second place runner-up thing on my LinkedIn profile to your ERP software that isn't relevant to me. So the key in my opinion to cap that all off is SDRs should be spending time understanding the company that they're reaching out to first. Once they do that, they have a ton of stuff they can latch onto and personalize. And then it's like, okay, now I can get into the more fun, creative emails. But I think the biggest miss is wasting time personalizing when you shouldn't be.
Your word about creativity, I think, brings me back to another interesting question. You've probably heard this before. There are SDRs in certain companies where they're usually asked to. They have a set of sequences. The only thing they're supposed to do is push them into sequences, make those 100 dials, call them, send those templated emails, try and get a meeting. Right? There's usually no room for creativity. What are some things that SDR managers are getting wrong in companies that you've been seeing or you've interacted with? And how should that actually change, or what should they do to get better in 2023 again?
Man, the number one, not only SDR managers, but companies in general get wrong is hiring, right? So it starts before the sequences and like forcing SDRs to run that motion, right? Often if you're breaking in to sales development or you're applying at another company, those managers aren't going to tell you how much freedom you actually have to be creative, right? But going back to your question, right? SDR managers and companies don't know how to hire, right? If anyone listening or you or in general takes anything from this podcast, sales development is not an entry-level position. I think that is the one thing, in my opinion, is the biggest crock of BS that people hear is sales development is entry level. And if you're applying at a company that looks at the SDR role as entry level, that's probably a sign that you're probably going to be working for a manager that's going to force you to throw 100 people into sequence a day and do all of the monotonous tasks for no reason, right? The reason it's not entry level is, one, SDRs get paid $20,000 to $30,000 more than the median income in the US. Two, people can argue and debate this, but It's really hard, right? It's not an easy job. Sure, there are companies with transactional sales and there are easier SDR roles than others, but the thing SDR managers get wrong is they look for entry level talent, and they start their bar lower in that talent pool. So don't look at SDR as entry level. And a motto that we have here is hire smart people and stay out of their way, right? That is the trick. If you run with that model and you equip them with tools, that is going to set you up for so much more success than some robot just clicking through tasks and sending generic emails. So yeah, man, we got to stop calling SDR entry level, because it truly isn't. And we have to start hiring smart people and allowing them some freedom to be their creative selves. And you'll see great results if you do that.
Got that. Prospecting, probably a year ago, isn't really an apples to apples comparison to what it is today. The landscape is changing, dynamics are changing, right? Sending out 100 emails, making 100 phone calls in a day probably isn't working for everybody. But the only challenge here again is SDRs are judged based on their leading metrics. Their KPIs are defined at companies based on how many calls they make or how many meetings they book and things like that. In your opinion, how do you think this should actually change going forward? What are metrics or what are insights based on which they should be judged or evaluated?
Yeah, I think what needs to change is companies, whether it's through a business intelligence tool, whether it's through their Salesforce, whether it's through a RevOps person, need to take a better and harder look at what are their leading indicators of success, right? Without a doubt, you need to have those baselines, especially in SDR, to get there. But you need to look at what are your internal benchmarks first. So if you have anyone that's relatively capable in your CRM, you'll be able to pull up data that shows you, hey, our best SDR made or set 342 meetings last year that led to $1.9 million in pipeline, that half of that made it to a decision stage in your sales process and a fourth of it closed, right? So you have to be able to do the reverse math and equip your sales development team with the right leading indicators of success. So I without a doubt, companies that don't have any of that just allow full go do what you want, you're going to fail, right? You just need better indicators of success that are accurate to your company and where your current success is, and not just some random pie in the sky benchmark that you saw, a LinkedIn influencer post. You really have to be flexible there. So to wrap that up, right? You need leading indicators of success, because that SDR, especially in a hybrid role, they need to know what a good day and a bad day looks like, right? Just because you didn't set a meeting or a prospect ghosted you doesn't mean you had a bad day, right? You could have had 9 conversations on the phone and got 4 email replies, and maybe you didn't convert any of that, but that's really good, right? That's a really good day, because you probably have cultivated some follow-up conversations for the future. So yeah, companies got to do a better job of having the right leading indicators, and not just some pie in the sky number that they pulled out and said, yeah, 100 dials sounds good. It's probably 40, right? It's probably 50, maybe it's 20. But yeah, we need to do a better job of not just telling our people to do stuff with no reasoning behind it.
That has to change, I guess. Let's look at it this way, right? Now we have SDRs. Let's assume they're going to get creative with things, right? They're going to be sending out those emails. They want to send out make brilliant videos and things like that. But one of the things that I usually hear from SDRs, I talk to people every week, is they kind of lose track of time, right? How much time do I invest into each of these? How do I plan my day? And as a non-negotiable, I think time blocking is really important for SDRs. What are some ways that SDRs can plan the day to make the best of it, to be at their productive best rather?
Yeah, I was probably the most unorganized person I knew before I got into tech sales. I was keeping track of my day on a a notebook and a literal calendar instead of using like my Google Calendar or blocking out time. And I think with sales development, right, or sales in general, time blocking is key, but it's only as good as if you hold yourself accountable to it, right? You can throw up all your fancy time blocks on your calendar, but if you're not actually holding yourself accountable to doing what you say you're going to be doing in that block of time, it's pointless. So I think one little tip and trick with time blocking is associating a goal to it and having like hey, if I'm going to block an hour for personalized, hyper personalized email, I want to send 8 of them in this hour, right? And you put 8 on a sticky note, or you put 8 on a little Google Doc, and you hold yourself accountable to getting those 8 things done. I think the second thing, same thing. If you're doing a call block, right? I want to make 30 calls in this hour, right? Holding yourself accountable to that is going to be crucial for success. I think taking it a step further, and this is where I think tactically in the top of funnel, this will change your life. If you are going into your day and you're just dialing through your tasks in outreach, you're dialing through your tasks in sales loft with no detail behind the tasks, you're going to shoot yourself in the foot. So taking that time blocking and taking it a step further into prioritized time blocking. So what I mean by that is you should not be dialing through your follow-up call tasks, your cold call tasks, maybe you got to call a guy that showed you and try to reset that meeting. Those should not all be congruent. Those should be separated. And the reason for that is like you need to keep your mind on the same track. So what I like doing within my time blocking is of this call hour, the first 20 minutes, I'm starting with my call resets. So the hottest people, they've already agreed to a meeting. They just missed the call for one reason or another. Then I'm moving into my hot follow-ups, right? So I had a great conversation with this person a month ago, and they wanted me to call them back now to set up some time. Then I'm moving into my referrals. And then I'm ending my call block with my cold calls because I've had all these warmer conversations. I'm juiced up. I've probably set a meeting or two, and now I'm ready to rock with the cold stuff, right? So I think taking time blocking a step further is key, and it will really help.
Absolutely love that point, Brian, because I think that's something that really puts perspective to your mindset as well, right? Because you've already had that great conversations. You've probably booked a meeting or two as well through those hot and warm leads. And then when you get to those cold calls, the boring part, the tough ones, it's gonna feel good. Even if you don't get a meeting, you know that you've actually done something right. I really love that. I think I want to try that out as well. Over the next couple of weeks. Now, you're a sales leader. You get hundreds of emails each week. You're going to get cold calls as well. What are some things? Again, this is something that you mentioned at the start of this podcast as well. There's no point sending out 100 emails. But given that so many people are trying to reach out to you, trying to get a meeting, trying to get a time on your calendar, what are some best practices SDRs can have with their outreach to cut through that noise, to make sure that they stand out, possibly to get somebody's attention?
Yeah, we could probably talk about this for an hour in itself, because that is like I was saying earlier, our theme this year is be different, right? Standing out from the noise, like you said. There's so much noise, right? I think I'll give you a tip in each channel, right? Obviously, if you're not calling, emailing, and using LinkedIn, you're already behind the rest of what the world is doing. Specific to email, I think it's simple, right? The subject line has got to stand out, short, to the point. And then when I open up that email, if it just visually looks bulky, I won't read it. I won't even read the first sentence. And I think like you look at companies like Lavender, like they're going to show you that Lavender is an AI tool for email that is going to really help you become a better emailer. Man, I probably get 20 of those a day, and I may read one. But the first key is subject line. You got to stick out because they got to open it first, and then the shorter, the better, right? The shorter, the better, without a shadow of a doubt. On phone, you got to be calling your executives after 5 o'clock. So we do this thing called 5 after 5. I'm not saying work until 8 o'clock every day. I don't believe in that like grind mentality, right? I think you can get your job done in 8 to 9 hours, but you gotta be strategic with calling, right? So two tactical things you can do. If you're trying to get a hold of somebody, call them after 5 o'clock their time, not your time, because the chances of them being in a meeting are highly unlikely. The second is make sure you have good data, right? So if your call connect rates are below 5%, there's better data providers out there for you. We have a 7 to 8% connect rate here at Ambition. And there's a lot more to it that I can share, but yeah, on the phone is call people after 5 o'clock because they're not in meetings, and make sure your data's strong. And then lastly, like standing out on LinkedIn, I think I'm not good at that because I'm not a LinkedIn guy. I think the people that are the best at that actually try to genuinely connect. Like I think it's really easy for people that are active on LinkedIn to sniff out the BS and go, yeah, you said, hey, how are you doing? Thanks for connecting. But I know in the next week, you're going to hit me with a pitch and I don't want to hear it. Right. So I don't think you can fake that. I don't think there's a tip or trick. I think you just got to genuinely connect with people. And if it makes sense and it feels right to ask them to meet, go ahead and do it. But those are three things that I would recommend when it comes to standing out.
Those are some great perspectives for sure, Brian. This is something that I, again, talk to people day in and day out. Upskilling yourself is a non-negotiable, right? If you want to get better at what you do, you need to put in that effort to learn something new, get better at your skills. For example, your copywriting skills, cold calling skills, whatever it is, right? Anything that you want to get better at, you want to make sure that you upskill yourself, right? Now, when it comes to skill development for SDRs, is there any recommendations or suggestions that you have for SDRs in terms of what could, if it's a book or a podcast or a course that they can possibly take up to get better at their job?
Yeah, the first thing you can do, and you should be doing this day one when you started a new company, or right now if you haven't done it yet, is find the top performer in your team and become best friends with them, right? See everything that they're doing, and basically take the things you like, leave the things you don't. But truly learning by osmosis is the number one thing you can do and what you should do that's going to help you be successful in your current role. The reason for that is if you're going out and seeking knowledge in all of these different avenues, like I was saying earlier, 50% of people are going to tell you to do something one way and the other 50 are going to tell you to do it the opposite. This way might work in your industry with your persona. This way may not, right? So make sure you are learning by osmosis through the top performers in your company first. And man, you're going to learn so much and you're going to accelerate to hitting quota and exceeding quota so much faster. Like you said, I think it goes beyond that though, right? We want to build ourselves up outside of our company, right? We're our own human first. We are not a servant to the business that we work for. We're individuals. And I think like the best content that I've seen, and I'll share a few different things because not everyone's a reader, right? Podcast wise, I think JB Sales, that's the number one way to go. If you want to listen to real, just raw, positive, uplifting stuff, without a doubt, listen to Make It Happen Monday with John Barros. I think content wise, if you want to read a little bit outside of a book, Beck Holland, when it comes to emailing, she is the GOAT. You just have to flip the script and what Beck's doing because she's outstanding, and super just knows what she's talking about. I think there's motivators, right? I think there's people out there that drive motivation. Some people need motivation or need to learn how to like hype themselves up. I do believe sales is a role where you got to get a little bit of energy. Sorry, my dogs are barking. We're here in the office. And I love following Larry Long Jr. Larry Long does some midweek inspiration for like 5 minutes live on his LinkedIn. And I think like, if you just need a dose of positivity, that's a great person to follow. Then lastly, book wise, man, I think I'm a Chris Voss guy, right? So any book by Chris Voss is going to be really interesting. Just, it's just interesting. His perspective is different, being a former FBI negotiator, but some of his books are longer. Two short and easy reads that I think will change your perspective are The Energy Bus by John Gordon, and then Atomic Habits by James Clear. Yeah, it never split the difference. Obviously, you got it right there. Yeah, like those three books to me are really cool, and they give you perspective. And I think perspective is really important in our world. So those would be my recommendations.
And those are great recommendations. A couple of things that I'm going to add to my list as well. One last question before I let you go for today, Brian. For SDRs, again, for them to be successful in today's economy, let's say 2023, the landscape is changing. What are 3 tips that you can leave us with for somebody to kick ass, for somebody to be great at their role?
Number one, know who you're calling. Right. If you're at a startup or a mid-sized company and you're not sure, like you do not have concrete ICPs, verticals, and personas, do your job and figure it out on your own. Don't wait for your manager. Don't wait for your company. Right. Figure out who you're calling. Understand the person that you're calling, emailing, or reaching out to on LinkedIn, because you cannot help them if you don't understand them. Right at the end of the day. So number one, know who you're calling. It's worth taking an extra 5 minutes and when you're researching that company before you add people to sequence and before you send that email. If I ask any one of my SDRs when they set a meeting and it comes through, the first thing I ask is, what do they do? What does that company do? They know the answer like that. The second thing that you can do to be successful, and I won't call these cheat codes, but this is the actual meat and potatoes. It's not all the copycat crap on LinkedIn. Be really good at follow-up. Be maniacal with your follow-up. We get told no more than yes, and a good call conversion rate on the phone in the industry is 10% and up. That's awful, right? Like when you think about it in a numbers perspective, if I'm having 10 combos, 9 of them are not gonna be yeses, right? But if those 9 that aren't yeses, if 8 of them are positive conversations and you're really good at taking notes, tracking follow-up, being persistent when the prospect wants you to reach back out, of those 8, you're probably going to convert another 5 into meetings. And what happens is you cascade your months, month over month over month. You're going to come into the next month with more warm conversations. And after about 6 to 7 months, you should have 40 to 50 warm people you're calling every single month. And man, that's a cheat code. Day 1, it's not going to happen. Day 90, it's not going to happen. But if you keep track of your follow-up, your job becomes almost, I won't say autopilot, but it becomes a lot easier. And then the last, again, I started with it, I'll end with it. That's our theme here at Ambition, is be different. Be different. If you're reading an email, if you're typing something up and you go, this sounds just like everything else, just delete it, right? Don't even send it, right? If you're calling somebody and you're gonna read a script, and you're gonna read scripted responses, and you don't have that person's LinkedIn up or their company site up, and you're not ready to just have a conversation, don't pick up the phone. But be different and take risks, right? Part of being different is taking risks. I'm cool if my SDR sends some stupid, crazy subject line. I'm like, what is that? Why did you do that? But if it sticks out and it's different, that's how you cut through, and that's how you reach the people you're trying to reach. So those would be the 3 tips I have.
That's Brian Liebel, ladies and gentlemen. I'll see you on the next episode. See ya.